Hey there, Summoners. It's your weekly champ rotation for League of Legends Season 2, Week 1. Very exciting. We're starting off the new season with a lot of brand new Summoner spells, a lot of brand new masteries, and all, obviously, for this week, your brand new champ list. We'll be go ahead and just diving right in as we always do. We don't want to waste too much of your time because we got a big show this week, as always. Obviously, I'm here with my regular co-anchor, Mr. Manslaughter.
Hello.
So we're just going to kick it off with Annie the Dark Child now, because actually Cody and I both play Annie, so we could probably both talk about her for about 5 or 6 minutes. I'll try to do it just kind of fast. Basically, what you want to do is farm with your Q, because with Disintegrate, if you kill something, you get your mana back, and obviously her passive is after every 5 spells cast, it will stun the target, so on that fifth play. So that's always good to keep in mind. And Cody, you can go ahead and dive right in if you want to.
Alright, and since we've already talked about Annie before, I'm going to talk a little bit about her build and just how you play her.
Good idea.
So, starting off, you're going to want to build her just like any other AP carry, either rushing a Rod of Ages or a Death Cap, depending on how tanky and healthy you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Death Cap just gives you a ton of AP, so it's a good item to rush to if you feel confident with your positioning. As for her abilities, they're pretty straightforward. She has one AoE normal spell, her ultimate, which is AoE, and she has one targetable spell. And like Dave mentioned earlier, her passive is after every 5 casts, her next ability is a stun. So one thing that I'd want to talk about is which ability you stun with. I know me and Dave talked about this in our games recently. What are your thoughts on that, Dave?
How to stun an individual, it depends. It's obviously, like everything in this game, is situational. But in my opinion, obviously, if you're going to stun one champ, you're going to stun with your Q after you already have it ready to go. I prefer, and I think you do as well, to have 4 abilities cast, then cast your E Molten Shield, and then hit them with the Q, because they won't be expecting it if they are paying attention to how many abilities you've used towards the passive. So I think that if you're trying to stun one person, use your Q. If you're trying to stun a bunch of people, I prefer to use the Flames and then Tibbers. Cody, you might want to chime in on that one, though. I mean, how do you feel that you should stun people?
I definitely feel like one-on-one you always want to use your Q, because it's an easy stun. But then I disagree with Dave on the Incinerate, because you want to get Tibbers down as early as possible, because he has the AoE damage over time. So you want to get him down as soon as possible in fights if you can. So if there's a ton of them, stun with Tibbers, then Incinerate, then pick off their low carries with your Q.
I understand what you're saying. I think it's more, and I think that you would agree, I was talking about more along the lines of, if I only see 2 people there, I'm not going to use Tibbers right away. I would stun with W, hit him with a Q, and try to have like my other buddies come help me, and then once I can get, I guess if you can hit 2 of them, if you can hit 2 or 3 people with Tibbers, that's pretty good. A little bit more, a little bit less than that, well, a little bit more is generally not going to happen, and a little bit less is kind of a waste. So if you can stun 2 people with Tibbers or 3, I would agree with it because of his AoE.
And one thing to remember is Incinerate is a cone spell, so it doesn't have that much range. So if you think it's going to be a chasing sort of thing, you are going to want to use your W and Q earlier, because your Tibbers has quite a bit of range.
That's true, definitely. And also, you're basically going to build her straight AP. Like Cody said, you might want to build a Rod, or maybe even I wouldn't build a Veil on her, but you could build a Banshee's Veil. But yeah, I mean, you're going to want to build things like Crystal Scepter, Abyssal Scepter, Death Cap, stuff like that. Void Staff, basic stuff. All right, moving on to the second champ that we're going to talk about this week, Ashe. It's right up my alley. I've said it 100 times on the show, and I will say it yet again. I play a lot of AD carries. Ashe is a really great champ. One thing that we were actually talking about this week, one thing you want to do with every AD carry, especially Ashe, is when you attack with her, while she's not using her auto attack, her critical strike chance increases percentage every 3 seconds. So depending on what level you are, it's going to increase by 3 all the way up to 18% every 3 seconds. So if you can wait like 10 seconds, walk up, auto attack them, then instantly volley them, and then auto attack them again because it resets the attack time, you can get like a 3 hit off very quickly. And I'm going to talk about pairing those hits later again when we're talking about another champ. But one thing you always want to do with ranged AD carries is you're going to want to auto attack, use an ability, and auto attack again. You can really get a lot more damage in. Cody, go ahead.
Yeah, Ashe I think is one of the better AD carries, as we'll probably say about every champion this week. I'd say 9 out of 10 champions this week are very high up
I completely agree.
in their category. Ashe, she's a very versatile AD carry. You'll find ones that do more damage, have better lane harass, but she's very utilizable, I'm making up words, in a lot of situations. Her ultimate, best initiation in the game. I think we said it last time we talked about her.
Mm-hmm.
Great stun. She has a slow, and her hawk shot's a free clairvoyance. So, if you don't already know her, learn her this week.
And also, the clairvoyance does not cost any mana, which is also a huge help. Which, I mean, you can just kind of wrap it off, even if you don't have to worry about using mana or whatever. All right, moving on to the next champ, we're gonna move on to Cho'Gath. I'm just going to hand this one right off to Cody because I don't play stuff like that. So go ahead, Cody.
Alright, Cho'Gath, fantastic champion. You can build him AP, you can build him attack speed, you can build him tank. Attack speed's not very valuable anymore. But just great champ all around. His passive is one of the best sustaining passive in the game. And basically what it does is every time you kill a unit with him, and by kill I mean last hit a unit with him, you gain health and mana back. So great sustain. He has a ton of crowd control in his Q, his W, which are knockups and silences. And his E is why you would build him attack speed, like with Wit's End and stuff like that, because it adds an AoE ability power damage to each of his auto attacks, which is pretty substantial. And then his ultimate, as we all know, is you eat someone and do true damage to them with 0.7 AP scaling, which is huge.
All right, moving on to the next champ, we're going to go on to Katarina, little assassin melee champ. And Cody and I had a chance to talk about it a little bit earlier, and I don't really think she's that great of a champ if you know anything about this game. She's just a very average champ. She actually has decent harass earlier in lane with the Shunpo. So that's kind of OP. But other than that, she's not doing that much. Cody, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, me and Dave were actually talking about this before the show. He probably just forgot because he's a forgetful man. But we were saying she is basically a pub stomp champion. If you know anything about her, she's really easy to counter because you just crowd control her during her ultimate, and it ends it, which is almost all of her damage.
It's really the bread and butter of her damage. I mean, like, it'd be like taking away Ashe's auto attack.
It has such a low cooldown that they just basically said, this is her damage, here we go. Because, I mean, her Q bounces a bunch and doesn't really do that much damage. I mean, it does maxed out level, it does like around 300 to 400 damage depending on your AD and AP to each champion. And it scales down in damage per champion it hits, or anything it hits really. So if it hits 6 different things, it's doing only 40% of the damage, which is really small. And one last thing about Katarina is you see a lot of people build her AP, but I was experimenting with her earlier, and after looking up some guides, AD Katarina, not your traditional Infinity Edge Phantom Dancer AD, but like Hex Tech, maybe like a Bloodthirster or something like that on her is very viable because her ult scales double the AP on the damage, and her Q, which is her little dagger throw, scales over double AD compared to AP. So
yeah, I would. Again, I don't really think she's worth learning. She's definitely not going to be either one of the champs to learn this week from either one of us. So, all right, and moving on to the next champ, used to be one of the most overpowered champs in the game. Orianna, the Lady of Clockwork. She has amazing harass early game, and recently, with not the most recent patch, but a couple of patches before that, they had nerfed her range, and it really affected how much she was played and how effective she was in lane. And recently, they buffed her and gave her the range back. So I expect to see a lot of Orianna players this week come out.
Yeah, they didn't give her all the range back, as I recently found out, but they gave her, I believe, half of the range back that she used to have, because they nerfed her down from 900 on her ball to 800, and they moved it back to 850, which is still a huge range for an ability. But Orianna is just one of those champs that very underplayed. Her auto attack, a lot of people don't know, it's her passive. Her auto attacks scale with her ability power, which makes her basically have 5 abilities that scale off her ability power. So you definitely build her AP. No reason not to, as I've seen some people do recently.
Always.
But she's got a fantastic AoE ultimate. I always stress this on AP carries. If they can't do AoE damage, they're useless late game. So she has 2 AoE spells and 1 targetable.
All right, and moving on to the next champ, it's going to be the very first, I guess you could call it, well, I guess chose a tank, but basically the very first, you're only going to build this guy tank. Basically, we've talked about him before. I think he's one of the best person to use jungling. I won't say he's one of the best junglers, but he's one of the best people to use jungling because he takes that tank and jungle role, puts it all into one. But the thing about him that I love the most is you get rewarded for building him tanky, so you might as well do it. You get rewarded for building him armor. We talked about it before in the past, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but really great items on him. Thorn mails. Really great items, because how much armor, and he gets 25% of that total armor as bonus attack damage, whereas actually in the previous episode, I remember I said adding to his attack damage, that's not true. It's a bonus, so it doesn't count as part of that crit, which you're not really building him for crits, but I'm just saying it doesn't build that way. And also, you can kind of build him almost exactly the same as a Moo, but you're going to build him a little bit more tanky because of that help because of that passive. Cody, did you want to?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. First of all, his defensive ball curl, which is his W, is basically a thorn mail that returns more damage the more armor you have. So building a thorn mail on him with this ability just shuts down AD carries because you can taunt them with one of the longest taunts in the game, if not the longest.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm going to disagree with what Dave said earlier. I think Rammus is the best jungler in the game with these mastery changes. You can literally clear the jungle with 4 minutes on the clock from blue through red all the way to golems and have full health coming out of golems and be level 4 and go gank. So I think that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that you and I both talked about it before. I really think any jungler, I shouldn't say any jungler, but a jungler or support should be able to fill 2 roles. It should be able to fill the tank and the jungle, or the support and the tank, because I don't know, it helps out that early laning process. It really does. I mean, you don't see a lot of lane Moo-Moos, you don't see a lot of lane Rammuses. See, it's hard to do. So, but yeah, I mean, Rammus' taunt's OP. He's really great. And one thing to use, if you see that, a fight starts to happen or you see like a Vayne or an Ashe come after you, if you just turn on to that defensive ball curl, they're not going to want to keep attacking you. I promise you that, because you actually gain armor and magic resist and you're returning damage. So they're not going to want to keep attacking you. All right, and moving on to the next champ, we're going to go to Renekton, the Butcher of the Sands. This guy will chop up sands like Emerald. But I'm just going to throw it right over to Cody because I've actually never played him. This might be one of the champs that I learned this week.
All right, Renekton, fantastic solo top champion. He falls in the league with Jarvan, Irelia. Says great solo top. He has a Fury system, just kind of like Tryndamere if you played him. But basically, once he's above 50% Fury, all his abilities get extra bonuses added onto them. And since we haven't talked about him, I'll just talk about his abilities real fast. His Q is AoE damage that gives him back 10% of the damage he deals as health. So it's great for sustain. And it has, when you have over 50% Fury, it does 270 damage plus 1.2 of your attack damage. 1.2 times your attack damage, sorry. That's a ton of damage. And if you look down at all of Renekton's abilities, really, they all have incredible scaling with attack damage. And Renekton also has a stun, which is his W. His E ability is great for escaping and chasing. It's a little spinny thing you see him do. I've played against him before. And his ultimate is just like Nasus, which we've talked about before.
All right, moving on to the next champ, another jungler, Skarner, who is getting a little bit of attention recently because I think people are starting to understand that his ultimate's really good. It's like the opposite of Blitzcrank's. Kind of. You go up and you grab him and you pull him wherever you want, whereas Blitz, you just kind of pull him to yourself. But again, really great champ, especially with that recent buff where they increased his attack speed. I've never really been down on this champ, I don't think, but I've never really thought he was that great. But after playing with him in recent games, I mean, you can definitely see he adds a very interesting role to a team fight. Very interesting. And he scales a little bit of AP and a little bit of AD, more so AP. But, Cody, do you have any thoughts on this champ?
Yeah, I think he's great for going in by yourself and playing as him because his ultimate, I know we all complain in team fights and games when no one's focusing the enemy carry or anything really if you're trying to focus someone. But he basically can just say, come here to whoever you want to focus, and you can bring him to your team on a silver platter. So if you're playing by yourself, he's definitely a great chance to play because he has a 1.75 second suppress. So that basically negates all the damage from an enemy carry in a team fight. So you need to make sure you use that effectively.
And like I said before, with his ultimate, you're going to just want to, you can grab people and pull them into your turret or grab people and pull them away from their turret. So it's really, really great ultimate. All right, moving on to the next, second to last champ, we're going to talk about Soraka. We talked about Soraka before, obviously, and I actually have not played her since then. I decided to learn a different support, but you can build her AP as well. You can build her for a little bit of damage, or you can build her straight support. It's really up to the individual and the role that they're going to play on the team. But one of the people that we actually play with has been playing Soraka a little bit and playing her mostly support. You can definitely tell, you know, she's a good champ. She's definitely worth learning. She has that great heal, and also her ultimate is a healing everyone on the map. So really great ultimate for team fights, definitely, and all sorts of fights. Cody, do you want to harp on Soraka?
Yeah, since we already talked about Soraka, I was just going to talk real quick about playing as her and playing against her, because you'll definitely be playing against her this week, as she's really the only support champion.
Yeah, and Star Call is a huge pain. So
yeah, when you're playing as Soraka, basically what you're going to be doing is supporting an AD carry most likely. And one thing to remember is that your heal not only heals them, obviously, but gives them bonus armor in huge quantities. At level 5 of this ability, you give the person 125 bonus armor. So basically you turn your AD carry into a tank of sorts.
Which is always awesome.
Yeah. And she has an OP ability which restores her own mana or a target's mana. So basically, with Soraka in lane, unless you're getting highly pressured, you're not going to get forced out of lane ever. But back on the pressuring side, if you're playing against the Soraka, she's very vulnerable until she gets a point in all of her abilities, and she gets a couple points in Star Call and her heal. So if you're playing against her, you're going to want to push her and put tons of harass on her, because her heal costs a lot of mana early, and it has a relatively high cooldown, which is 20 seconds. So put pressure on her in between heals.
Yeah, and I will say, for all you newer players out there, once you start to get a little comfortable with the champ, one thing I would suggest doing, and I tell the people I play with this a lot, is you have to dictate the pace of the play in the lane. You have to make it known in the first 4 or 5 levels that you're there and you're going to be playing your lane. So, like Cody was saying, before she can get a point in all of her abilities, that's when you want to go ahead and make sure she's aware. This isn't going to be an easy lane. You might want to put an extra point into your heal or something like that. So it will force her to play a little bit more passively and you can win that lane. Because when you're going in a lane, you have to definitely show who's dominant and what's going to be going on early. All right, and moving on to the last champ of the week, and Cody knows I'm not going to shut up about this one either, like I did Brand last week. This is my second favorite champ next to Brand. It's Vayne, and I absolutely love her. I think she's the best carry in the game, with the exception of maybe Ashe, and only because Ashe has like a really great ultimate. But I think that whereas Ashe's ultimate's really great for initiating a team fight, Vayne's really great for having in a team fight. If you want to jump over to a friend of mine's channel, League of Legends Fail, he actually has a great clip of Olaf diving me at around, I think, level 11. And, I mean, he should have easily killed me, but because of Vayne's abilities, I was able to maneuver enough and get out of the way. Vayne's, all of her abilities are really great. Like I said, what you want to do with her, basically, is you want to, auto attack, tumble, auto attack, and you're going to do a lot of damage. And also with her W, which isn't actually, it's just a passive, it's procs with every third auto attack, or actually any attack of any kind, because if you tumble or condemn, you're going to do an attack, and that's going to put a silver bolt around the character. It's going to hit them for an extra amount of true damage, which is really great. So you see a lot of builds on her. I try to make one for Solo Mid's website, and it's such a huge pain. So if you want an idea on a build for her, I say start off Thorn's Blade, go Berserker Greaves, build a BF sword, your best friend sword, build a Zeal, build Infinity Edge, finish the Zeal into a Phantom Dancer, and build another Phantom Dancer. Because the faster you can get that third auto attack off, the faster you're going to be able to do a lot of damage. So
just two quick things about Vayne. First being is she is, while I agree with Dave that she's one of the best, if not the best AD carries, she's definitely not the easiest to play. If you get a chance to look at her abilities, well, you're going to need to if you want to play her because she has a lot of different, I guess, counting that you have to deal with. Like she has an ability that every third shot it procs and does additional true damage. She has her roll, which does more damage after you tumble. And the other thing I was going to say is that a lot of people don't realize this, but Vayne's ultimate, while she's ulted, when she tumbles, she becomes invisible for 1.5 seconds or until she attacks again. But this is huge. I know Dave didn't realize it when he first started playing her, how big of a deal it is.
yeah, it definitely did. Yeah.
But it makes it so hard for you to get focused in team fights. Yeah. So you need to be aware of that and you need to use that to your advantage.
Cody, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna interrupt you because I'm so excited about talking about her, but that's why she's way better than Ashe in team fights, is because people, if you see that somebody starts to hit you, you can just tumble as long as you're not CC'd, and you can get away. Also, one thing to do with her, and her real quick, just one thing to do with her is, if you're trying to evade or get away from somebody, you can actually, run into a bush, depending on the distance they are away from you, and, hypothetically, if you use, the double bush on the top and the bottom lane, you can run into the bush, and you can use your ultimate, and then tumble into the next bush, and they won't see you do it. Basically, you can use that, juke people out and get away from them. And also, one thing that, just real quick, your movement speed increases if you're running towards a visible champion. So if you're trying to run from Vayne, one thing that's really great to do is run into a bush, because then she won't be able to catch you as long as she can't see you. That's just one thing that's really annoys me when I play her. All right, everybody, that's the champ rotation for this week, but everyone's favorite part of the show is coming up. And Cody, who is your champ to learn this week for everyone listening?
Champ to learn this week is Rammus. I know I pick tanks a lot, but he's just such a good jungler, especially with the new mastery pages. If you don't know much about those and him jungling, you should look up any new build and they'll all have the exact same mastery page because it's just overpowered on him right now. So if you don't know him, learn him.
All right, and obviously I think Cody would agree, learn Annie if you don't know her yet, but we're assuming that people know her. If you don't know her, you should learn her because one of the best champs in the game. Definitely top 5 champs in the game, which soon enough we'll be coming out with a list for. But I have to say, you got to learn Vayne this week. Great champ. The one thing that I've really noticed about League of Legends recently is a lot of AD carries are not being played for whatever reason. All right, and I'm Dave Piper for Cody Lilakis. Is there anything you want to say to the listeners?
Don't auto-lock in champions.
Don't auto-lock in champions. That's the theme of the week. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Have a great week.